Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Zoom on the Fly. Tonight, the 24th of June, we're continuing the journey by adding smartphones to the laptop. Tonight, my lovely wife, Gretchen, has decided to join me where she was absent last week, and I had to get through it by myself. But tonight, we're going to start with a short review. Okay, last week we talked about broadband speed, and all I'm doing right at the moment is doing a quick review so that I know that everybody is up to the same speed that we were at the end of the meeting last week. Broadband speed is one of the more important things. The way you check it is by going to speedtest.net. You click go, and you're going to get results. This is what Zoom says you need for a standard connection. 1 up, 1 down, and for the higher quality connections, 2 up and about 2 down and about 3 up and 3 down. The real world is that's almost laughable. I've been at this for a couple of years now. I'm finding that I'm really going to be struggling if I don't have at least 20 down and 3 up. I realize that's not what they're saying, but when you're trying to run multiple cameras and do a Zoom presentation is a lot more than just setting and watching. Anyway, let's continue on. If your broadband speed is too slow, we talked about it before, one of the easiest things to do is to turn off all the live streaming that's going on in your home or the people watching YouTube and all that stuff, thus allowing all of the bandwidth to come to your Zoom connection. That may not make you real popular with the rest of the folks, but it will get you a good broadband or a better broadband into your Zoom connection. Also, I really recommend that you connect with an Ethernet cable. So how do you turn off that audio and video? Well, this is a picture of a Zoom screen, and right here, the video has been turned off, and you can see a red line through the start video down in the lower left corner. If you notice, the up arrow right next to that brings up a menu. And you'll notice that the HP Wide Vision High Definition is checked. That means that the laptop camera is working. We'll get into that more later, but for right now, that's all you need to worry about. If you're adjusting your audio, this is the one right next to the video that you were looking at. It's the mute or the microphone. And you'll notice that I have a check mark next to a microphone array, and the speaker is same as system. For most of you signing on with just a cell phone and a laptop, it'll be same as system in both places. Is your laptop up to the task? Most of them are if you've got a Windows 7, 8, 10, 11, something like that. But I will caution you, if you start plugging in additional cameras, and you'll want 1 per USB port with some qualifications. We'll talk about that on the 4th week when we start talking about equipment. And where do we go from here? Well, we talked about Jerry Coviello's book, and right now we're at the point where he goes into the presentation and setting up equipment for a full Zoom presentation. We're going to stay right here for the moment and focus on some problems that a lot of people just getting started run into. The camera doesn't focus on the fly. It's too small. It's too dark. It's too light. They add more light, it doesn't help. And what do you do to fix the problems? You have to understand how your camera works. Automatic cameras, and we're going to be talking about automatic focus and automatic exposure, and all automatic light meters work on an 18% grayscale. Now, I know that doesn't mean a darn thing to you. We're going to show you how to just use your cell phone to get the background that will get you in the ballpark when working with automatic exposure and automatic focused. Very important, critical actually. The color of your background must be as close to 18% grayscale as possible. And that doesn't mean it has to be gray. It means it could be green, but it has to have an equivalent value in light of 18%. I know that sounds crazy. We'll talk about it in a minute, but here's the real biggie. The next one down, texture. You want a background that does not have texture. and we'll get more into that a little bit later. Then we'll show you real quick how to pick up the right background when you go to Hobby Lobby or Ben Franklin or wherever. You want colored foam core with no texture. So what does that mean? Well, let me close this up. Well, you'll remember from last week, we'd take this fly to the craft store. You notice that fly has multiple colors in it. Let's go to the display at the back of the craft store where they have foam core. Now the foam core that you're going to be looking at will be pieces of foam board that's got a smooth, absolutely smooth surface, foam in the center. That's why it's called foam core. And they're about 20 inches by 30 inches. So what do? You take the fly, you place it on the foam core and take a picture with your cell phone. When you have a picture that looks about like that, I don't care if it's a gray background or what color the background is. If you can see the fly colors and the background colors, you have something that will work, and your camera is telling you it likes it. That means it's 18% gray. Not that you care about that. All you care about is get something that allows the background to look good and the fly to look good. And you just take your cell phone and the fly to the craft store and pick a color you like. It could be purple. It doesn't make any difference. We're adding the smartphone to the laptop studio. Well, before we go any farther, and I really struggled with what we're going to talk about next. It's not really part of this, but it's an important part of Zoom. And I see so many people misunderstand what these two words mean and how they use them. They are called pin and spotlight. We're going to talk about pinning the video feed. And you notice I've got a S in parentheses behind both, because often people think that you pin or spotlight a single feed. You can actually go up to 9, but we'll get to that. Pinning. Pinning means that you enlarge the selected video feed no more than 9 per screen. Anyone can pin themselves or another person. The only person that sees that pinned picture as a full screen is the person doing the pinning. There are ways you can use that. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The pin is recorded in the cloud, but if you record on your local computer, the pin is not recorded in the cloud, excuse me. But if you record on your local computer, it'll be recorded there. Spotlighting, you must have a host or co-host responsibilities to do it. Number one, it enlarges a selected video feed for everyone, and you can go up to 9 spotlights per screen. It's recorded. We're doing that right now. Otherwise, you would be seeing the whole group of us rather than what you're seeing right now. But now that we've talked about pinning and spotlighting, how would we use pinning? We know spotlighting is used by the host, me, to fill the screen so you can see what fly I'm tying or what zoom point I'm trying to make. But pinning, well, maybe a guy wants to watch his girlfriend on Zoom and have her fill the screen. Okay, that's one way to do it. Another is, I wonder if in a class of several people that it would be advantageous for the instructor to be able to pin just one person to check them out, or on the flip side, for the one person to be able to check the instructor. Just a couple of thoughts. Just think about it. Pinning is what anybody can do as long as the host has not locked up the screen by spotlighting. And so think about the different ways you could use an enlarged screen of whatever video feed you wanted to look at. But anyway, now it's time to connect our phone. This is where the fun starts. First thing we're going to do is there's a number of ways to connect a phone to Zoom. One of them is through a third-party software. There's about 6 or 8 of them that I could find on the internet that do a pretty good job. I've got experience with a couple of them. One that I thought was worth mentioning. It's called Iriun. That's called IRIUN, and that's webcam software and app. And how do you get started with that? And all of them. You have to download the software onto your laptop computer or your computer, period. Don't have to be a laptop. You also have to download the app on your cell phone. And that's what you see right here. You have the larger gray, if you will. It says webcam and it says download for Windows, Mac, and I don't know what Ubuntu is. I have no idea. So some of you smart computer people can tell me about that.
It's
But
a
anyway,
Linux
we're gonna-
program, Al.
What's that?
It's Linux.
Oh, Linux. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Oh, in fact, for all of you people listening in, that was John Wright, and he's one of the few people running Zoom on Linux. And well, we'll talk more about that in the fourth week. But if you're needing any help with Linux, he's the guy to go to. If you're like me, I'm PC and been there forever, or you're a Mac, one or the other. Anyway, so you've downloaded the webcam software onto your computer and the app onto your cell phone. So the first thing you do is you go to the cell phone and you tap the icon that was downloaded, and it downloads and opens on your cell phone. In fact, you can see there's a picture kind of in the background, but there's this message covering up the picture. In fact, you can kind of see me holding the camera that I'm taking the picture for this particular illustration. But it says, waiting for the connection. Please make sure that the Arian webcam server is running on your computer and that this phone and the computer are connected to the same Wi-Fi. Now it says the third option is to use a USB cable. And I'm gonna be honest with you, if some of you sharp computer guys out there figured out how to do the USB cable, great. I never could figure it out. We'll get to that on the fourth week though. So what happens when I go to the computer? Right back here, this is the cell phone. It's on and trying to talk to the computer. And the computer, well, the computer has a message on the screen that says, no phone available. Well, this actually happened to me. I was trying to hook up and I said, what is going on here? It's not working. Well, here's what I found out. After the couple of minutes it takes me to explain it to you here, it actually took me about an hour to beat my head against the wall to figure it out. I always connect my computer to the router via Ethernet cable. If your computer is hooked up to Ethernet and the cell phone is talking to the network via Wi-Fi, they're not on the same network. Let's go back one. It says, third line down, this phone and computer are connected to the same Wi-Fi. An Ethernet is not a Wi-Fi. So as soon as I unplugged my Ethernet cable and allowed the computer to go to the Wi-Fi, I connected. And as you can see now, I've got the same picture on my cell phone there in the bottom. Is right above it is that same little icon on the screen. They're talking to each other. Well, what that does now is we have connection. So now we have to get it into Zoom. And here's how we get it into Zoom. I froze this picture, and you remember those little icons? The one that was by the camera, the little up arrow, and it brings up the selection. And I told you there was a check mark right next to the HD webcam ID. Well, there's a picture of it. Well, when you installed that Arian and turned it on, so you got these pictures back here, you got those two pictures. Well, it's sitting there wanting to sign on to something. And I highlighted it in red so you could see it, know what I'm talking about. It'll say Arian webcam. And the way you hook up to Zoom is a little check mark that's right by the laptop camera. You just click right next to Arian webcam and you'll be signed on. And that's one of the ways to sign on to Zoom with a third-party software. We talked about internet service. That's the broadband has enough up and download speed. And I told you needed at least 20 and 3. And the truth of the matter is it's better if you have more. Well, one of the things about the technique I'm going to use now is that it is a second connection going into the same internet. And it's going to cause more stress on your broadband connection. I'd like you all to do something along with me. I want you to click. There's a little green icon in the upper left corner. It looks like a kind of a shield with a check mark. Click on that and see what you get. Well, you should all see something that says Zoom on the Fly Friday, 24 June, 6 o'clock PM, Mountain Daylight Time, meeting ID. And there's a meeting identification. We're going to need that later, but for now, you can just click and make that go away. Click in the screen anywhere and make it go away. Because we're going to show you 2 ways to use your cell phone to get signed on. Let me get my cell phone. One of the things.
Can you stop and go back to something?
Yeah.
You talked about what we're going to do now is going to affect your internet. Isn't it when you connect or your speed, your broadband, you're using more if you do the third party? Or
No, with the third party, the information is going on between the computer. Yes, it is, but not the same. You're right. That's a very good point, because you're using the Wi-Fi. I have found no way to measure it. And I was going to get to this, but we'll get to it now.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. All of you take a look at, on your screen, I'm going to have you pull up the same thing. Take a look at the video in the up arrow, click on it. And you should see a list of cameras, and then some things that call blur my background, choose virtual background, all that kind of junk. But the one on the bottom says video settings. Click on it. And that should bring up a kind of a whitish box that's got about a dozen different links on the left-hand side. Of course, the one that's highlighted right now is video, because that's the one you clicked on. Did you not see that?
Came up like that, yeah.
Well, what I'd like you to do is go down to one called statistics. It's 3 from the bottom, third up from the bottom, and click on it.
Okay.
Okay, now go to the one that says Zoom, clear to the right. And what we are using right now for this call is 348 megabytes of information. Don't worry about information for what. Just remember that number 348, because we're going to check it again later. But for right now, let's just click off onto the screen and get rid of that box. Or you can click the X, one or the other.
Interesting.
Now, what I want to do is, let me get my cell phone. And it's been plugged in on charge, so my phone won't be running out of battery while we're tying flies tonight. All right. That's what my home screen looks like. The first way to sign in is actually using one complete additional connection. And how do you do that? Well, I'm going to go to my browser and pull up. Okay, right there. Now I'm going to show you on the screen. I pulled up the email. That's probably the one that you all use to get into the call. And it says join the Zoom meeting, and it's right there. And that's the Zoom hyperlink that you probably clicked on to get into this call. I'm going to do that again with my cell phone. So I'm going to be setting up a double connection. And it's starting to sign on, going through its gyrations.
You're going to cut that part out anyway, weren't you?
Well, I have to. I mean, it was a big mistake, so I had to. You don't think I'm going to put a big mistake up on YouTube, guys? Crease, come on. Well, anyway, so I'm going to go back here, and the second way to sign in is the way you want to sign in, because you want to join an existing meeting, not double up. I'll show you why here. So I'm going to bring up my Zoom. Okay. I'm up on my Zoom on the app, on my app. And as you can see up there, second from the left is join.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let me pull this back for a minute. Remember that little green icon in the upper left corner? I'm going to click on that, because the number that I want is one that's called meeting ID. And I'm going to hit that second one over from the left. It says join. It allows me to join an existing. And it says, what's the meeting ID? And I'm going to put it in there. It's 838 and 3311 and 7020. Join.
Somehow it kicked me off the whole system. I had to get on, as they say.
Yeah, it happened to me as well. So anyway, I'm signed in now with another, the process that I went through of doing a second connection, didn't like it. And it cut me off along with all of you. So anyway, the best way to sign in with a smartphone, I think, is to do the join the existing meeting. And that's what I just did. Well, now I've got two connections. Let me find the other one. I'm going to spotlight that, add spotlight. So now these are my two phones. The one is looking at my feathers. I'm trying to make Jack Gillis feel really bad here. And the other one is the laptop. So now we've got two connections. And the one that's looking at the feathers is actually going to get moved over to the tripod and go to and be the on-fly camera, if you will. But before I go over there, I want to show you something. I promised you this, Gary Begley. What I'm going to do now is take this right down here, and this is the clamp to the light. And you can see I've got it hooked up to a pipe clamp, but it could have been just hooked right to the table. And then if you come along here, you see that I've got two of those and they kind of cross each other, and I just tie wrapped them together. And that's what gives me my under the fly lighting, which the fly is right there. Now I'm going to turn those on because we're getting ready to start tying flies and quit zooming. Okay, now, as you can see, those are now on and shining on the underside of the fly. Now, there's other ways to do it. Jerry Coviello puts a ring light under his, and it works really well. So that's another option. Gretchen, let's go to the wide angle. Okay, what I'm doing right now is, I better go back and talk to you about something for a minute. What I want you to notice is that I have a clamp on my cell phone. I'll set that down and I'll show you the actual clamp. This is the clamp the way you buy them off of eBay or Amazon. It's got a tripod hole in the bottom and it stretches like this. It's for mounting a cell phone on a tripod. The other thing is the quick connection block that goes on my tripod. When I put the two together, I end up with a quick connect clamp. And that's what I have installed on my cell phone right now. Okay, so now we're going to move over to my tripod and mount okay, great. Now one of the things that's really cool about this, and let's talk about it for a second. One of the things that's kind of cool is that you end up with a 3-camera shoot with only 2 devices. You've got the laptop right here. You've got the facing camera, or it's called the selfie camera, facing out. And I'm going to show you some tricks about using it. And now when I touch the screen, I'm on the other side and I'm facing the fly. And I can use finger zoom to zoom in on the fly. But before I do that, one of the things I wanted to show you is if you don't have the clamps and you want to do something right away, I did my first Zoom class with this setup right here. It's a couple pieces of board and a cell phone held in place with rubber bands. And that will do the same thing as this couple $100 device I'm using right now. What you do is you clamp this to the table, set the vise in front of it, and you're tying flies and demonstrating. Anyway, I'll set that aside and get it out of the way. Now we're going to zoom in on our fly and see what happens here. Oh, that looks pretty good. Okay, so we've got it all focused and we've got our fly going. Does that look pretty much in focus, Gretch?
Yeah, pretty
I
good.
can't tell from here.
Well,
Okay,
could you-
good.
I don't know if you can go a little closer.
I could go closer, but I'm going to have to be going back and forth anyway.
Okay,
So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is on the left of the screen, I'm going to go to our materials like we normally do on a Zoom presentation, except I got a whole bunch of junk over there right now along with the materials. I got a spare camera and some other stuff that's going to go to work next week in the Zoom room, and I've got my materials. Well, you won't have this extra camera to play with like we normally do. You're going to have to use something else. So let's start the actual fly tying demonstration now, and I'll show you what you have to do. So what I'm going to do here is remove the spotlight. Now we have a spotlight on my cell phone and going to the fly. Now I'm going to touch the screen again and go to the selfie side of the camera. That gives me my third camera. So I touch the screen and now it's just a picture of me. But one of the things that I can do is I can use that picture to show people, well, here's the material. Here's the material. This is the spool of thread. In fact, I'm going to lay that down. We're going to talk about the fly pattern. Whoops. Yeah. We'll talk about the fly pattern, and you can show the pattern right there, just like we did last week with that index card. Show it right there on the screen. There's another way to do it, but for here, we're doing just a cell phone presentation. That's one way to do it. We've got our hooks. We'll hold the hooks up, the bag of hooks up, and yeah, we got size 10 dry fly and all that kind of stuff. You're going through the materials like you normally do. There's another use for this camera. And right now I'm on a rolling desk chair. And you know, these rolling desk chairs have a little hydraulic that allows the chair to go up and down. And right now I'm at the highest position. But if I pull the little lever, I'm reaching down and pulling it. Oh, hey guys, I can talk to you now. And
Yeah.
so we have a third way of having a presentation. I'm talking to you here. I can show materials by raising my chair up and bringing materials in, and I can go to the other side and zoom in for a presentation. And that's what we're going to do. And one of the things that's really important when you're doing a presentation with this camera, remember it's automatic focus. You can drive that focus crazy. I've got this right here is a thing called Sort Quick. I use it all the time here in the fly tying room when my fingers get all dried out from working on the irrigation system or whatever. And I get it on my fingers so I can tie flies. That camera will follow focus as I move it back. The proper way to take an item from clear back here, you notice that the fly now is out of focus and the Sort Quick is in focus. It's because it's the bigger item. If I was showing a full cape back there, I could show a full cape, what to do with it, and then it's time to get back to the fly. Well, you have to lead the automatic focus back to the fly. And then what do you do with it? You either pull it straight up or straight to the side so that it'll stay focused on your fly. If you don't do that, you'll drive it crazy and it won't know what to do. There you go.
Good
Okay.
tip.
And there it is, it's out of focus. And we'll bring it back into focus and come straight to the side. And that will allow you to use that focus to your advantage rather than having it screwing you up. Okay, so all that aside, now we're down to tying flies. And the first one is the Trude. There's the recipe. If you want to jot it down or whatever, I'll be getting my materials over here at the vise. I'm getting some hackle, some peacock, and a calf tail. I'll just set that all over there while you're looking at the recipe. And now I'll go back to full screen
So Al, does the matte finish versus the shiny finish on the color board in the background, is that still required even with using the cell phone? Because it looks like it may not be as nearly as sensitive as a standard camera.
That is totally smooth and no texture. And I'll tell you what, it'll drive that cell phone just as crazy as, well, when we turn it around, it focuses immediately on my shirt. Unless I put something bigger in front of it.
Okay,
So you really need, believe me, I've tried everything under the sun. And if you're going to be working with any kind of automatic cameras, especially with automatic focus and exposure or other features, but the focus especially, you need a background with zero texture.
And the cell phone is just an automatic focus camera.
Yeah. Well, it is, unless you're really good. There's a feature in my cell phone anyway, where I can go in and I can adjust everything manual. I mean, it's a really high-end camera, but it's also not what we're teaching here tonight. We're teaching you how to get along with the automatic features. There's other ways to do it. But anyway, now I'm going to take this out of here and put a hook in the way. I better show you the roadmap. I'm getting off the Zoom thing right now. And this is the roadmap. This is where we're going. We're going to tie, this is the fly we're going to tie. We call it the Trude. We start this thread just a short distance. Let's say it's 2 eye widths back on the hook shank. Just get a good thread base start in there. And we're going to do just like we've done before. We're going to tie this fly backwards. And we're going to take advantage of a product that we often have that we don't always take advantage of it. Here is a saddle feather. It's a really long one. But I want you to notice something right up here is it's a little bit webby. In fact, to keep going until I get right about here is where the good dry fly stuff is. Well, tonight I'm tying a wet fly followed by a dry fly. So guess what? I'm going to use the butt end of this feather for one fly, and then I'm just going to tie the next fly out of the same feather. And and we're going to actually make use of something we may have thrown away. So I'm just going to tie this in place with a couple of turns. I want to make sure that that first turn of hackle, the fibers point straight up off the top of the hook. You'll see why here in a minute. And then I'm going to just start wrapping towards the back. Now I'll just trim off that waist. One of the things that stem does is it builds up just a little bit of bulk towards the front of the fly so that we have a little bit of taper to the body. Not a lot, but some. Now we're just going to wrap. I'm going to do, that's the third turn. We'll just stop it right there. Notice each turn was behind the previous. I didn't go forward, I went back. Do I need to do that over? Somebody that missed that or anything?
Now we're good.
Okay, now I'm going to continue binding this to the hook as I wrap towards the back, just like I did last week. Now I want to see, let's see, I want that tail to be a little bit longer. And you can see when I pull that feather out about how long the tail is going to be. I want it to be just a little bit longer, so I'll wrap a little bit further back on the shank. Needs to go just a tiny bit more. That looks like about the tail that I want, so I'm just going to snap forward and break that feather off.
Oh.
It's now just about to the point where I want it for the I want it for the dry fly quality.
Interesting.
Now what we have here is our hackle in place and the tail in place. I got one wild fiber here that don't want to get with the program. That's why God gave us scissors, is to get rid of it. There we go. Good. Now I am going to tie on my peacock body. And I've discussed this with a number of people, and I happen to agree that you should tie the peacock on by the base at the back of the hook and wrap forward. tie it, and then so you're closer to the tip when you tie it off, and then you should counter rib over that to strengthen it. You'll end up with a really good, sturdy body made out of peacock. Well, I'm going to do that, but differently. I'm going to start by tying the tips of the peacock herl on the hook. And I'll just bind a few of those tips part way back. Again, I'm building up just a little bit of bulk so I get a taper to my body. Now I'm going to bring my thread back so that it is even with the peacock herl. Bring the peacock herl in line with the thread, grab the two together and start wrapping back. Each turn that I make around the hook makes a turn around the thread. See that? It's building a peacock chenille while I wrap. Let me continue wrapping towards the back. Think about what I'm doing. The tips were tied on at the front. When I get to the back, I'll be closer to the base ends, won't I? So I've tied this on by the base. Cell phone keeps getting in the way. That never happens in a fly tying demonstration on Zoom. Never. Okay, now what I'm going to do is tie this off right at the back. Now remember, I'm tying off the butt ends. See, I'm closer to the butt ends right here. So I've done exactly what most people think you should do. It's tied on by the butt ends. The tip ends are tied off up here. And now I'm going to counter rib right back through with my thread. This body is bulletproof. Now I'm at the point that I'm going to have to zigzag through my hackle so I can get in front of the hackle. All right, I'll just push that hackle back and wrap a little bit of a thread head there. Pushing my hackle back. It makes a nice looking hackle. And now it's time for our wing. By the way, I first learned about this fly when I moved to Idaho from California in '78. And I met a guy at the fly club in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. His name was Ray Miles. And I went fishing with him. He said, you know, he looked at my box, and at that time I was a commercial tire and I had thousands of flies. He says, you know, I got 2 flies in my box. Actually 2 styles. He says, I got this one and I have a dry fly version. And I said, oh, really? Interesting. Well, I can't tell you the days on the river when he would just whip my butt. Something terrible. I can't tell you how many times I'd say, Ray, what'd you catch it on? Oh, I caught it on the Trude. And the Trude became one of my absolute go-to flies. And I'm going to trim off all this waste right now. There we go. And then tie that in place. Okay, good. Trim that up a little bit. And that's going to be a completed fly. And I'll apply my whip finish, and a good whip finish starts at the back of the head. Each subsequent turn gets closer to the hook eye. If you go the other way, you can cause a problem. And what do I mean by that? Well, for those of you that haven't seen this demonstration before, let me start my whip finish. Most people wrap everything up to the front, and they start the whip finish there at the, get that thing there. There, they started at the hook eye. And then they start each turn going further back on the hook, and that's fine. I want you to watch something though. The first one I made, all the original thread went under 5 turns. I want you to notice what's happening here. You see, that's going to lay right across the top. I
Mhm.
wonder where the weak point is. Anyway, I didn't make exactly a good looking head by doing that, but at least it tells you the difference between a good whip and a bad whip. Set that aside. Now, any questions?
That's interesting.
No questions on that. It's so simple. They said, well, I won't even mess with that. Don't think short of that fly. It's produced a heck of a lot of fish for me. I can see right now in the picture, and tying under the lights and everything, I should have had about 20% less hair in that wing. The wing is dressed too well. That's almost a dry fly wing. But anyway, enough of that. The next fly is going to have the identical materials, and it's one of my top 6 flies in my personal fly box. This is one of them, and the next one is as well. Now it's going to be a parachute, and I'm just going to start my thread base right here at the area where I want my parachute post to be. Now this fly is so easy. It's well, it's almost well, it makes me sorry to even have to show it to you. So, but I'm going to show the recipe, and let's highlight that.
Dirty rat.
The Dirty Rat. I'm going to tell you the story about it. You guys can read. I don't need to read the darn thing to you. The story goes like this. This friend and I worked in the telephone business together, and we would take our vacations at the same time every year. And every year we'd go to the Bighorn River for a week. This buddy of ours from Helena, Montana, his name was Don Richards. He decided to come over and join us one time. Well, we'd been on the river for 3 days when Don showed up. He couldn't get off work as soon as we could. And anyway, so we all got it ready to go out the next day. Like I said, this is now our 4th day on the river. We hadn't touched a fish, and that is not the reputation for the Bighorn. It was just an absolute humbling experience because we'd never been through that before like that. Dirty Rat, Don Richards. Notice the similarity between the initials if you were to use them. Don Richards went out the first day and he wasn't 30 seconds on the water and was into just one hell of a big fish. Whoa. 2 hours later, Don, 6 fish, Al 0, Bob 0.
Oh, shit.
Jesus, this is day 4 now. God dang, what's going on here? So finally we went over and Don, what's going on? Oh, it's just some crazy little parachute that I got here. It's nothing. Okay, so we went back and we tried every crazy little parachute we had in the box. Still zip. Well, by the end of the day, we managed to catch a few fish, but darn few. And so anyway, that night when we got back to the cabin, we said, Don, you're going to show us this fly and you're going to tie us one. And so anyway, after a few beers, we had a fly, and Bob, who was an ex-Navy guy and had a very colorful language, says, he is a blankety blank dirty rat for not having shared this with us sooner. And the name stuck, only I took all the expletives off. It's just Dirty Rat. Replace the spotlight. And now we're back on this, and I'm going to, I think I'll put a poly post on it. I do both calf and poly. It works either way. And we've already done some calf tail, so I am going to talk about some ways to put poly on. I can take this poly right here and just tie that on the hook. Pull that up, wrap around it a few times, and it's a post. Cut it off, and the fly will be a little bit heavy in the front, not a little bit light in the back. I'd kind of like it to be all the same all the way through. Well, there's a couple of ways to make that happen. And one of them is to get rid of a bunch of this poly yarn. I'm going to break this thing in about half. So I'm only got half of the bundle. All right. Now I could just take and tie it on like this and then pull both of these up and wrap a post around. And that would be another way to do it. Well, here's a third, and it happens to be one of my favorite. Is I'm going to just tie this on at the front. And it's a way of getting an evenly tapered body, both front and back of the post.
Huh.
Now I've got the same amount of bulk in front of the wing as I do behind the wing. And I'm just going to go ahead and wrap it in. I've got the general build of my body. Now I'm going to wrap around my post to strengthen it. You notice I turned it upside down to do that? Well, that's because it's a lot easier. I'm an old guy and I've got shoulders that have been busted up really in bad shape. And I can't reach up to do that. But I can go up by going down. Now I'm going to go straight from the top of that post there. Let me tilt this just a little bit. And then go straight from the top of the post down. What that does is installs a strand of rebar in those wraps. I call it pouring concrete and installing rebar. And that really strengthens that very, very fast and makes it hard as a rock with very little bulk. There we go, round and around, straight to the bod, and I'll go round and around again. And all that's doing is binding all that in place. And the last one, I just go around, up and down both. Okay, now I'm going to end up cutting that loop off when I'm done. But for right now, we're just going to get our hackle out. Now, remember that hackle we had left over from the other body? Well, here we go. Let's just tie that guy in. I think I'll do it just right in front of the. Notice that I have a piece of stem that's pretty long there. That's kind of important. Because I want that stem to go all the way to the top of the post. And I'm going to wrap up there one more time. And you notice that stem is also a piece of rebar, strengthening that post even more.
Huh.
Okay, there we are. Hackles in place on the post. And now it's time for our body. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to tie it in. It's going to be tied in by the butt end and by the tip end, but we're going to do it backwards. And I just got a bunch of peacock right here. I'll just get those all tied on. Tied on at the front. Probably think I lost my mind tying it on at the front, but that's all right. I probably did. Trim off the waist. Bring the thread back so it's right in line with the peacock. Bring them parallel to each other and start wrapping towards the back, making each turn a little bit further back on the hook. Again, we're making a bulletproof body. I'm taking some of the twists out because it's getting twisted up so much I'll be breaking the hurl, and I don't want to do that. And now what I'm going to do is just kind of untwist all this peacock hurl so I can tie it off at the back of the hook. Well, and it's really tangled bad, so there's a way around all that. Notice what I'm doing is I'm taking a loop around my finger, and I'm just going to tie it off back there, just as if I was doing a dubbing loop. I will admit this, the device that I have here holding my webcam, or not my webcam, but my smartphone, is less than fun to work around. But that's all right. I'll get through it. Now I'm going to rib forward through that, just like I did before. It's bulletproof and stopping right behind the wing post. Because if you've ever watched Gretchen and me tie parachutes, we never tie them off at the front. We always tie them off on the post. So I'll wrap my hackle in there. I think I'll put another turn in. That'll work, I think. Maybe another one. There we go. Now I'm just going to take and continue wrapping around the post. That binds the feather down. I'll trim off the feather. Take one more turn. Bring the thread to the front, not the feather. Feather tends to jam up the eye, and we don't want to do that. And now I'm going to go ahead and put on a half hitch and a whip finish. All right. And there's a completed Dirty Rat. So there's the fly, and there's our presentation for tonight. Any questions?
Yeah, Al, could you show us how far back you've got your iPhone or your phone from the fly?
From the
From the voice?
Oh, yeah. Just a minute.
Just hit-
Why don't you take and hit the wide camera, Gretchen?
How many cameras have you got going?
Gretchen, I got cameras I haven't even told you about
I
yet.
know.
So there's what we got, John. I have one hand, I would say about 8 inches.
Yeah, okay.
I wanted to have it as close as I could because the more I finger zoom, the lower the pixel density is in the camera. I mean, you can zoom in as far as you want, but you start out at 12 megapixels, and by the time you get zoomed all the way in, you're down to 2.
Yeah, that's the problem I found too. So,
And so if you're starting out with one of the low megapixels and zooming in, it makes it even worse.
yeah, mine looks like an old television screen when you get close enough. It's hardly even viewable.
How much did you zoom the phone?
Well, here you can watch me go back to normal. I would say it's 60%.
Yeah.
And that's a guess on my part, but let me zoom it in really tight. You know, that's you can decide if that's good, bad, or whatever the heck, but it looks pretty pixelated to me on this end. I don't know what it looks like to you guys.
Looks really good.
Yeah, it's not too bad at all, Al.
Well, good. I'm pleased. It was looking. I thought it looked pretty bad, but that's okay. I'm not going to argue with you about that. So, if there's no questions, I am going to get rid of all this spotlighting of Gretchen and me. Hey, we're on gallery view. I don't know about you guys, but we're on gallery view.
Hi, there's Priscilla. Hi, Priscilla.
So, any questions or anything?
No, I only have one kind of question. Would it be somehow, could you do like a mirror at 45-degree angle? Now maybe it reverses the image, but so that the cam or the phone is not between you and your vise somehow. Is it possible to do that with a mirror?
Boy, I hadn't even thought about that, but you know what? I've got a bunch of experimenting to do because I'm setting up a new Zoom studio starting tomorrow. I'm going to finish tearing down the one that I've been using and setting up a new one. And I'll take a look at it. I don't know whether the mirror would be more of a pain in the neck or not. I can't tell you that. I've even thought about a periscope. I mean, I thought everything under the sun.
Well, that's a mirror, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's a double mirror, but a periscope. If I could just get this little thing to stick up there on the fly and stay the heck out of my way, I'd be delighted. But I haven't come up with it so far.
Very
Have you,
good.
Jack Gillis, have you?
Al, when you did the double screen with the fly and you're using your phone and the materials list, you have that up on the double screen? Was the materials list a share screen?
I'm not quite understanding, John. Say that again.
Okay, when you first started with the TrueFly, you had the fly up and then you put up next to it in a second screen, the ingredients, the recipe for it. So we had two screens that we were looking at the same time, the recipe and the advice.
Right, and that's just two spotlights. I can do that again. I mean, it's the same thing as I can spotlight right now,
But were
Wherever
you
you-
using a share screen for the recipe?
and then yeah, just a sec, and then add spotlight, and
So he just did two spotlights.
Yeah.
is that what you're talking about?
No, you had one that looked like it was a part of a PowerPoint presentation or maybe a document that you put up. It was black with. I
Oh,
think-
yeah. Okay, yeah, that's
Oh, when we were tying the
yeah,
fly.
that's this one right here. Or no, that's the wrong,
Yeah, that's the one.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an OBS, John.
Okay, so you just did a scene, yes, a scene
I did a
swap.
scene for each recipe has a scene in OBS.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then for you guys listening in, we haven't got to OBS yet. That's another thing that we may get to downstream, but it's that's getting into a lot more complex studio.
Hey, Al,
Anyway,
I've got one for you.
yeah, okay.
On the autofocus. When you talked about the autofocus, you talked about if you had something behind it, like the spool you had, then you move it forward to the fly and remove it to the sides or top or bottom. When you were on the first fly and you were cutting the calf tail, you were pretty far behind the fly and the focus got off of the fly. But when you moved away, it came back. Will that autofocus on the phone catch up and ultimately refocus on the fly
No,
versus moving your hands in and then out?
I moved my hands in and out, but they were close enough to it to not cause a problem. Where right now, let me show you what would cause a problem. Okay, there we go. That's now if I take something that's a lot bigger than just my hands and like this, and I move it clear back here.
Yeah, switch over cameras.
Oh yeah, okay, gotcha. Let's
Spotlight.
spotlight for everyone. There we go. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, when it's focused on that, obviously the fly is out of focus. Well, and it popped right back. We're lucky enough.
It came back. It came back fine.
Came up.
Yeah,
You know, and I went straight up from there, and I usually prefer coming into the fly in a way. And it's good. One of the things about the fly, David, that I found, there is enough texture there in that fly to attract it. But if you have just a bare hook with some thread on it, it has an awful time finding it.
Okay.
does your cell phone, I'll have three cameras, three separate little button circles?
Yeah,
Okay, so you have a multi-camera on that. Or multi-lens, whatever you call them.
yeah, it's just different focal lengths, if you will. It's different zoom lengths that you can do.
Oh, okay,
That's all that is that just different zoom amounts.
okay,
Closer and closest, or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
Yeah, these new iPhones and new phones have got better cameras in them than my old digital SLR, and that's disgusting.
yep.
And easier to use.
Yeah, for sure. So, any other questions, comments, snide remarks, or anything?
Mhm. Al, I just wanted to comment, gentlemen made a thought, or you guys talked a little about using a mirror. And that crossed my mind as well. Many years ago, I was in a residency at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. We did a lot of intraoral photography. And it's amazing what you can see with a mirror positioned in the mouth and the detail and all that. And if somehow you could position that mirror probably within a couple inches of the fly without it being in the way of your tying. I think you could get an incredible detail and view without having everything right in front of you like that. But something to work on.
Oh, yeah, that's a thought. I was just thinking also of some of the angles that I'm trying to add three cameras on the fly. And I could even get some other angles if I had mirrors at the right place, couldn't I?
I would think.
Huh.
Ah,
This tying room has got to the point where I can't even get to the hackle on the wall. Jack Gillis don't have to worry because we can't get to the hackle because of all the darn cameras stacked in front of it.
I'm looking at my tying desk and it's got all of Al's tying stuff on it because he's got too much Zoom stuff on his side.
Yeah, okay, that sounds familiar, yes.
Well, actually, Al, if you're really clever, you just go to a hospital that does lipos surgery, laparoscopic surgery. And they have this little video camera built into that little cutting tool that they cut out your gizzard with. And so you just get one of those things and just stick it up through a hole in the top of the table and point it
Well,
at the
I
fly.
would suspect one of those things probably costs more than my whole day house.
Oh,
did.
of course it does. But
No more ideas. No more ideas.
Yeah.
He's dangerous enough as it is.
well, I
Yeah.
know where I can get you a used one because they just did gallbladder surgery on me last week. So
Oh, well. All I can tell you is I've gotten to hanging around with David Buckner and the two of us get together and we're just about dangerous. I'll tell you, keep dreaming up stuff.
great job, though.
Yeah,
Great.
anyway, thanks for staying with me through the crash and all that stuff. I managed to crash something once in a while. The last time I had to finish, the last time I taught this particular clinic was like 2 years ago. And I had to finish the last hour and a half with just a cell phone because I completely crashed my computer. It wouldn't even talk to me. I ended up having to buy another one. Hey, I will give you a tip on something that's going to come up on a week from Friday after Fred's presentation. I just got this. And if I had known what I know now, I could have saved myself a $1,600 purchase of a computer because I got the high-end gaming computer. Well, there's this little device right here. Jack Gillis has got a bigger version of it. Mine is called a mini ATM, and it'll run 4 cameras and all the junk that goes with it. And it doesn't require any extra memory in your laptop other than the ability to hook up one computer, because this is a thing that runs 4 cameras, but your laptop thinks it's one. And I could have, and that cost $500 instead of the $1,600 I paid for a gaming computer to get the same thing done.
It also eliminates the cards that you need to run an HDMI on a computer.
The total, yes, that's one of the things we're going to talk about downstream. But anyway, there are, as we become aware of new things, there are a lot of opportunities out there to spend a lot of money or to spend less money, whichever.
And he
Well, I
prefers
think
more.
we're watching Gretchen's face and she's sitting there thinking about how she can spend $500.
That's exactly right.
Well, I just bought new furniture, so I'm not going to complain.
Yeah. Yeah, I could probably hustle up a couple of cameras and be okay.
Yeah. I had a good time last
You
week.
know, Al, they do sell an HDMI camera that's smaller than a UV light.
What?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah, it's expensive. It's like $1,000, but they do sell one.
Oh, dear.
Get here with like a ballpoint pen almost, and you can point at whatever you want. Great quality.
That might be better than a mirror there, Chuck.
Technology happens so fast, you can't
Yeah,
get through your first program.
Oh,
But I
Get
tell
any
you,
idea.
oh, yeah,
See,
it's
a $2 mirror or a $1,000 camera.
There you
I
go.
gotta say, when I'm
$1,000
looking at
camera.
it, that camera would be,
yeah, there's 2 things that I'm coming up with is I'm going to have a water feature, thanks to David Buckner helping out with that. And we're trying to figure out how to make it look like an actual moving water stream, not just moving water, but superimposing some digital video of the bottom of a stream so it looks like an actual stream flow. That's one of the things. And another one of the things that I want to do is I want to add a jib arm to one of my cameras so that I can fly through the air like they do on television, with the crane operators and all that stuff. Well, but we're going to do a mini version of it here at the Zoom studio. So we can come right down to the fly, and
That's the first time I've heard about that
well,
one.
I dreamed that one up this afternoon after I was talking to David yesterday. So,
Oh, David, you're gonna be,
Just get you a drone, Al. Use a drone.
oh, that's the only problem with the drone is it's going to drown out my audio.
Yeah, yeah.
Helium balloon.
Oh, that's a thought. Helium balloon, and then we could float the camera into place.
There you go. A small hole in the balloon as
Yeah,
it
right.
floats.
hmm,
Well,
Well,
that's
I-
the-
Set a
last,
pulleys and some wires and you're ready to go.
yep. Well, last week I tried to I kept this going on the live stream to Facebook because there were some good ideas came out and wanted to keep it in the recording. Now we've got the laparoscopic surgery idea and the HDMI $1,000 pinpoint camera from Jack. And I don't know, I would suspect that Paul down in Australia has got some down under thing that we haven't even heard of before. That kangaroos
wife
probably move around.
My wife just walked in when you talked about $500 thing and she goes, don't even think about it.
Or you can do like I do and go on the cheap and buy yourself a $25 manual focus camera. And that's what I'm showing right now.
Yeah.
That's that fly with that cheap $25 camera.
Well, I'm really impressed with your phone video quality, your picture quality. That's crazy good.
The
Yeah,
phone
it
does it. The phone does a pretty good job. And I earlier this week I had 4 telephones hooked up trying to do some things, and my computer kind of went into a tizzy fit over that because that much third-party software plugged into it just didn't work out. So
I would think that if you wanted to do a reasonable low budget approach, you would only use a phone.
as I said, I did one program where I crashed the computer and I had to do an hour-and-a-half program with just a phone.
But it's doable. You showed where you could go up and down on your stool,
Oh yeah,
And-
that's
and
that's what I
just-
did.
flip back and forth with a screen reversal, and it's great. And you can zoom so easily with your just finger expansion on the screen. And I think that's excellent. It's probably the easiest and most straightforward. So
Very doable. And if you couple it with a laptop, I don't know, it works pretty good.
You can also use virtual computers and have 3 or 4 computers running off of one box. We do that quite a bit in the server world.
Sure. By the way, I looked up another thing I'm going to ask John Wright to talk about in the week of 8th of July when we start talking equipment. I'm going to have him talk about Raspberry Pi. And we're not talking about the stuff you put whipped cream on. But anyway, that has more to do with Linux and stuff like that. So anyhow, we'll get into that.
Suddenly back into my friend's yard. Oh my God. So cute. You're adorable for looking after him. So
I think somebody's got a dog that they're talking to there, but anyway.
Danny,
And
You got it.
David Buckner will be talking about some stuff that we can do with the GoPro. He's doing an investigation on that, and that should be fun too, because quite frankly, I never looked at the GoPro as a possibility for zooming. And I don't know, David's coming up with some ideas that sound pretty good. So it'll be fun. But if nothing else, it's time for us to get to Midsummer Murders again this week.
very good. Well, thanks, Al. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Al.
Take care, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks, Sean.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.